Research is formalized in curiosity. It is working and trying with purpose. With this note, the PG and Research Department of History, Jamal Mohamed College, feels proud and privileged to organize 5-day international workshop on research methodology, tools and techniques of this writing. We welcome you all for the day's event. Devotion means an enduring sweetness of your heart. Now we call upon Mohamed Mishab of third year history to recite a few verses from Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Now it's time for welcome address. We request Dr. M. Mohammad Tajuddin, Associate Professor, Department of History, to welcome the gathering.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning to all. First, on behalf of History Department, first of all, welcome our secretary correspondent, who is always helpful for such activities. In absence, I welcome our secretary correspondent. I welcome our Treasurer Sahib, an active gentleman, hard worker, and well-wisher of progressive activities of the department. I welcome our Assistant Secretary, the grandson of Pradhan Rautar, one of the best academicians of this institution. I welcome our principal. He is very simple and kind in nature. He is well-wisher of the department and encourage our all academic activities. I also utilize this opportunity to welcome our vice principal and additional vice principal. I welcome our member and honorary director, director of pastoral administration in absence here. Today, the resource persons. I welcome today's resource person, Dr. S. Niyazuddin, Associate Professor of Department of History, Sri Vasavi College, Erode. Next Professor Dr. Mohamed Idris, former head in charge of Maharana Pratap Chair, Department of History, Punjab University. Once again, a hearty welcome to the gathering on behalf of PG and Research Department of History, Jamal College. Thank you.
Now it's time to honor the guest. I request our beloved head of the department to allow us down to the chief. Kindly give a loud applause, please. And I request Dr. Umar Siddiq sir to present the memento to the chief. Kindly give a round of applause, please.
Entering into now, it's time for technical session 1, formulation of hypothesis. Dr. S. Z. Niasuddin, Associate Professor, Department of History, Sri Vasavi College, Erode. He has a tremendous record of teaching and research experience for more than 21 years. He was former NCC officer at Sri Vasavi College. He has presented many papers in national and international level seminars and acted as resource person. He also served in Tangier as board member. Welcome you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to one and all present here. Assalamu alaikum. I first of all thank the management, the head of the department, and staff members for always showing love and affection. The way in which they welcomed me, always a thrilling moment for me whenever I come here. And here we have assembled to discuss or to speak about the research aspects, how a research scholar can do his research without any hurdles, and how he can succeed in presenting his thesis or dissertation or a project. This is the chief aim of this workshop. The aim of the workshop is to educate the scholars here and the budding researchers to learn something. And with this aim in their mind, the organizers have fixed many topics which were really interesting. And yesterday, you people have attended the inaugural session in which the Vice Chancellor, former Vice Chancellor, Dr. Rajendran sir, gave a wonderful speech. I listened to it, and the other speakers also done a wonderful job. I think that would have educated you. And today it is a fresh day, and today I am going to speak about the formulation of hypothesis, for which I have prepared some slides to make you easily understand what an hypothesis is and how to formulate it. Right? Now, let me present my presentation, please. Where there is intellectual liberty, definitely there will have intellectual pursuit towards acquiring knowledge. I find that intellectual liberty here in Jamal Mohamed College by organizing this wonderful seminar, workshop. As you know, as all of you know very well, that research is a process of development of scholarship in divergent field, for which the scholars spend a lot of time and money for it. For sometimes the research will take many years. They put a hard work. So in such a or in pursuit of knowledge, what they are going to accomplish is that they are going to present a wonderful thesis, dissertation, or project. In that process, they might have to face many hurdles. There might be constraints and how to accomplish this. So here we are having the topic today, the formulation of hypotheses. You see in the first slide itself, I have mentioned your only limit is your mind. That is your mind. Your only limit is your mind, your thoughts. So a researcher must have a good mind, and its thoughts should be not only focused one, it should be vast. He must have a freedom of thoughts. Then only he can produce a wonderful thesis. Right? Next slide, please. So the aim of this technical session one is to understand what is hypothesis and to learn how to formulate a hypothesis. So this is the aim of today's workshop. Now let us go to the next slide. What is hypothesis? You see, that is an image, a picture. A boy is thinking something, right? The hypothesis is nothing but it is a thinking process. Everyone's thinking is entirely different. What I think, what a scholar thinks, is definitely a different one. Then what is hypothesis? Go to the next slide. And now operate the slide quickly. Operate to the next. So here the meaning of hypothesis. Actually the word hypothesis is a Greek word which means putting under it. This word had been used in drama. It had been used in geometry. For the first time, this word hypothesis is used by Greeks, that too in geometry. And Plato was the first Greek philosopher who used this term hypothesis. So hypothesis is nothing but a hunch, a belief, or a speculation. Hypothesis is nothing but these three things. You have to note it down: a hunch, a belief, or a speculation. So, hypothesis is something supposed for reasoning or argument without assumption of truth. You don't know the truth, but you assume while doing research, you are assuming something. So, hypothesis is an assumption. Sometimes hypothesis is also an idea. Everyone have his own idea, and it is also an idea that is discussed and presented with an evidence. After your research, you are going to prove the hypothesis, or sometimes you might fail to prove the hypothesis. So it is an idea, it is a proposed answer, and it is an unproved assertion. So hypothesis is also an unproved assertion. In bracket, I have given in Tamil also, so that students can understand it. Hypothesis is an unproved assertion of a researcher that will be supported later by his research. So it is a proposed answer. It may be derived from theoretical ideas, or they may be suggested by exploratory research, or it might be given on the basis of your observation. What you observe in the surroundings, you can produce it as a hypothesis, and after the research, you are going to present the truth behind it. So it is a proposed answer, it is an idea, it is an unproved assertion. Next slide. So it is also a shrewd guess. Every scholar, every researcher had defined this in a different way. The words are different, but we can easily understand that it is nothing but thinking of the researcher. So hypothesis has been is a test tool, a thread that runs through the subject, and it is a shrewd guess which is provisionally adopted to explain observed facts and conditions. And so the sources of hypothesis are insight, knowledge, and mainly the imagination of the scholars. You must have good imagination. So whether it is science or any subject, any new inventions, everything begins with thoughts and imaginations. So the source of hypothesis is also your insight into a subject, your knowledge, and the imagination. Right? Next. Here we are having two approaches. Here, the first approach for doing a research or to answer a research question, we adopt two approaches. The first one is a direct approach, which is an observational method. The first approach is to gather appropriate factual data, examine them to see whether an answer to research question can be formulated. You will frame you after finalizing your topic, after identifying your research problem, you will write research questions. I will once again explain you with a few examples as well. After selecting the topic, what you will do, you will identify a problem to which you have to find out the answer. Not only that, to find out the answer, you are having two methods. One is, the first approach is to gather appropriate factual data and examine them to see whether an answer to research question can be formulated. The second is, you use prior research. You use prior research that might have been done by you or that might have been done by others. You use prior research and you use your thinking to come up with one or more hypothesized answers to a research question or research questions. So you frame your thinking, your thoughts into a hypothesis that you are going to prove after doing your complete research. You understand this? So what we are going to discuss is the second approach. The first one is a direct approach where there is no need to frame any hypothesis. You just observe the data, you just observe the evidences, then you write the hypothesis. Then you proceed with the examination or investigation. In the second approach only, what we are doing, we frame a hypothesis and as a researcher, we are going to prove it. Right? So these are the two approaches. Then next. So that kind of the second approach, we can say it as hypothesis testing research. You frame your own answers, your own thoughts. Then what you are going to do, you are going to test your hypothesis. So hypothesis testing research is a research that starts with a hypothesis, usually derived from previous theories research team and gathers factual data to test it become true. That can be known only after the completion of the entire research process. You can prove your hypothesis only in the concluding stage. You understand this? Right. Next. So few questions to hypothesize. This second, what he wants to establish. He might establish a law, he might establish a theory. What he is going to ascertain or what he is going to discover that he is already having in his imagination in the form of hypothesis. So only if you know what you want to establish or ascertain or to discover, then only you can frame a good hypothesis. And what new approach you are going to adopt in the research process. And what is the theoretical framework of examination or your research? In what theoretical framework or what theoretical basis you are going to do your research? A research without a theoretical framework will not be a good one. Then only you can formulate a good hypothesis. Right. Before going to these slides, let me give examples. Go to the slides. Previous slides. Here, no, Rajadharangari. It is a historical source, isn't it? Our belief is that it is a historical source. Rajadharangari, Kalhana's Rajadharangari was the most important source to know about the history of. But here you see one that I noted a wonderful. You see, Rajadharangani should be viewed in totality we are existing history hypothesis of Kalhana's Rajatarani. Understand this? So already everyone believes that Kalhana's Rajatarani is a historical work, but she claims that thinking is not a permanent historical fact cannot remain a permanent fact. You understand this? Change alone is permanent in history. Right? What you think the same evidence in a different way. So that they conceptualize it and frame it as a hypothesis. So this is one such example how to formulate a hypothesis on already known knowledge. Hypotheses are built from already existing knowledge based on observation, right? Or based on the research that has been done by others as well. Okay. Next slide. Next slide. Right. Slowly show this picture. Let you see these images. What you find here. First, is it first slide? Please.
Yes, sir. This is the first one.
Next one. You move to next one. The photographs. You see what you find in this image. Just see it. That this is nothing but a hero stone. That is a hero stone. There you find a hero fighting in the lower tire. You find a hero fighting with a tiger. In the second one, it is a scene of heaven. Women ready to receiving the hero who died fighting the tiger. The last one, they go to heaven, and there you find a Shivalinga. I think you notice this. There is a Shivalinga there. Nearby there is a Nandi as well. So this is a hero stone, right? Next slide. Just you observe this one. A researcher who surveyed a particular area, a researcher who want to fix this problem and to frame his hypothesis, he wandered some area, hilly regions of this is actually taken, these photographs were taken from Bargur Hills. So there a researcher, a history researcher, went there and he found certain hero stones. There you find a 3-tier hero stone. It is a hero stone in a neglected state. No one is carrying, you see. There also you find a Shivalinga in the first tier. It was lying idle, no one is carrying it. There you find a hero stone in the lower tier. A hero is fighting the tiger. You people are observing it. You have to frame, being a workshop, you have to frame a hypothesis for this observations. Right. You show the next slide, please. Here you see a broken image. Only a person with interest will notice it. For others, it is just a stone with some images. No one carries. There are many people going on that side. No one is looking or giving importance to the hero stones. It is only a person who had a previous knowledge about this hero stone. That person noticed it. He takes some photographs, geotagged photographs, and he was a researcher actually. Here also you find a tiger, a man fighting with a tiger. In the upper stage, it is assumed that it was a heaven. So what you understand from this, people have faith that after death they will go to heaven. So it is there were many tribal peoples in the hills in Barbour area. You see, you know about the Barbour hills. There were many people who have faith on God and who have also faith on life after death. We can assume that these people, once they had faith on God and they will go after death, they will go to heaven. Right? You just observe it. I will ask you questions as well. Then only workshop is just, I am not going to lecture anymore. You have to observe it and you have to frame the hypothesis. That's why I bring this slides. Next, you show another, you observe it carefully. You observe it carefully. Yeah? Right. Next, show the next slide, please. See, what is it? This is also a hero stone. These are hero stones found at Usimalai of Barbo Hills. Show it. These were collected by a researcher who is surveying to identify his research problem and to frame research questions. And after framing the research questions, he has also to frame a hypothesis to prove his idea. So before doing that, he is surveying. He is surveying whether I can proceed with my research. While surveying the area, he finds these things. He is not able to go into interior regions. He assumes that there might be many number of hero stones in the reserve forest areas of Barbour. But the forest area is not accessible, so that whatever he finds, he take photographs and he is preparing to frame a hypothesis and he is ready to fix his research questions. Right. Next, you go to next slide. Here you see, here it is a newly constructed temple. It has not yet been completed. It is a temple, the same temple that had been built in. You can find hills on the other side of this temple. It is a hilly region. Now people are building a temple there. A temple is a process of temple. Right? Oh, okay. Next, you go to the next slide. Next slide. Right. So the usefulness of hypothesis depends upon the researcher. It depends upon you how the hypothesis is going to be useful to you in research. It is not the guide or any other person who will help you. The usefulness of hypothesis, because it is your thinking, your thoughts. You are going to think about what you have observed in the field or what you have collected from a library, what you have collected from various theories, and you evolve a new thought. That we call it hypothesis. And the usefulness of hypothesis is based on your keen observation. What you observed while I showed that slides. Second is, it is a disciplined imagination. You see, imagination is also a disciplined one. So imagination, we can imagine anything. A researcher must have good imaginations, isn't it? Our imagination should not be like a researcher's imagination cannot be like a normal person. So that here we see the imagination, your imagination must also be a disciplined imagination that might create a new thing. It must be a creative thinking. Then only the hypothesis will be a good hypothesis. Second, and you have to frame the theory. You can frame you must bring the hypothesis under a theoretical framework. What you are going to prove in your research, that you have to think about. With this only the hypothesis will be useful to you. Otherwise, hypothesis, some scholars don't have hypothesis, that they adopt the first approach. They don't frame any hypothesis. They just go and observe things and present their findings in the form of reports. But whereas in social sciences nowadays we are framing hypotheses to prove things. So for that you need good observation, disciplined imagination, and you must formulate, you must bring the hypothesis within a theoretical framework, right? Next. So see, now you see here, Saivism is the most popular religious cult in hilly areas of Burgos. We don't know. We have found some hero stones. We find Shivalinga in the hero stones, and we imagine that our imagination to frame a hypothesis that, oh, in the past people might have worshipped Shivalinga. You might imagine that people might have been following Shaivism. So this is your observation. You cannot, you can assume that Shaivism is popular, but you have to deeply examine other things as well. You have to interview the tribes. You have to understand their language. You have to understand what was their religious belief prior to the coming of Shaivism there, because it was the Lingayats who are the worshippers of Shiva who brought Shaivism to hilly regions of Burma. We understand this. So a researcher framed a hypothesis. He thinks that Shaivism is the most popular religious cult in the hilly areas of Burgos. This is a hypothetical. So you have to prove it after examination. You have to study the hero stones. What was the date of hero stones? This is Burgos hills. It is just my assumption. It is an hypothetical statement. Just finding few stones and deciding that Shaivism is popular. No. What was the past religion of the tribal people of Burgos? There were many number of tribal groups that topic. So you see that sometimes hypothesis and thesis gives a further research question. It provides us new research questions. Hypothesis also helps, or again, it makes you to further proceed or further ask questions and to find answers. We are not going to stop with here. And he framed a research question. He decided a research topic. Why the Shaivism is adopted by tribes, then the cult of nature worship lost its prominence among the tribes of Burgos. It is a hypothetical statement. Hypothesis. It is the hypothesis of the thesis. Hypothesis of the research work. If Shaivism is adopted by the tribes, worship lost its prominence among the tribes of Burgos. This how this researcher going to prove it. He has to prove it, adopt various or different methodologies. He had fixed the hypothesis like this. Then he proceeds with further research. he meets the tribal groups. He understands that they had also many other religious practices. They worship trees, they worship snakes, they worship elephants, they worship the nature. They have a different, some tribal groups have a different set of worshipping practices. Sometimes they worship the hero stones as well. You see that hero stones were also worshipped in that region. Hero stone was, you see that you can, those hero stones that were being neglected, there are few hero stones which were worshipped by the tribes and other people as well, those who are not tribes. So this, the researcher understand that, oh, there exist many different worshipping patterns, religious patterns. So we can frame a theory, that the cultural aspects are not a permanent thing. Religious aspects are not a permanent thing. Everything changes with the passage of time. You understand that? We understand. He can frame a theory. Right? So next slide, please. So research question or hypothesis, the nature of research question or hypothesis should be this one. It should be like this. It must be clearly stated. You read that hypothesis statement, I think you understand what it clearly states. So hypothesis should be a clear statement. Right? The second one must not be a vague statement. It must be blind. It must not be a blind hypothesis. It should be easily understandable even for an ordinary person. And it must point out certain concepts. It must point out certain concepts. It points out the concepts that culture is not a permanent thing, or religious practices are not permanent. It changes. So it must point out to some important hypotheses. Must point to some important concepts. Then only the worth of hypothesis will be good. Right? Next one. Next slide, please. It's not moving. Right. Observation and formation of hypothesis. Observation and formation of hypothesis. Just once again bring those images or pictures, photographs that I have shown to you. And now read these passages. So culture is defined as the transformation of non-genetical aspects of a society from one generation to another. Culture is defined as the transformation of non-genetical aspects. Genetical aspects you cannot refuse. It will, whether you accept it or not, it will come. This is a statement that I get from a book written by a former secretary, Shri Irayan sir. Irayan sir mentioned, I read some books. In it, he had mentioned that culture is defined as a transformation of non-genetical aspects of a society from one generation to another. So it was, culture is nothing but it is a non-genetical aspect. If I go to mosque means I don't know what will be my generations will do. Right? So the concept is that the culture is not a permanent entity. Here, the culture is not a permanent entity. Again, we are having a hypothesis statement. Religious practices changes with the passage of time due to the likeliness to other forms of worshipping patterns. You understand this? So, religious practices are also not permanent. Culture is also a not permanent thing. Religious aspects also change. So, it is an interesting aspect. You see, you can apply this theoretical framework, or you can apply this hypothesis to any culture. You can apply this to any. Yes, not rejected, that will be a finding. Not doing itself is also a research. Here, once again, you see that how a researcher observes certain things in his field research and how he formulates a thesis. I told you, I read it earlier, and you see that religious practices changes with the passage of time due to likeness to other forms of worshipping patterns. So hypotheses here are predictions. This might be a fact or not be a fact. So these are just predictions of the researcher. So in the language of the hypothesis, always discuss variables or the elements that you are going to test. And the variables can be objects like the hero stones or the events or the concepts. So hypotheses are predictions. Sometimes it is assumptions. Sometimes those are hunches that a researcher will have to prove. Right. Next. Another example. This is about a project work done in this college. A student named Ramachandran, he did his MA in 2006 or 7. A student Ramachandran did a research on Vayalur. Anybody from Vayalur? Tell me. It is a temple study. It is a research about temple study. Anybody? Because you are Trichyans. Everybody know about this famous temple. What you answer? Speak louder. Vayalur is famous for Murugan temple. Oh, this is the observation of general public. Whenever you ask somebody in Trichyapalli, they will say Vayalur temple is a Murugan temple, Subramaniya Swami, Lord Subramaniya Swami. Right? Everyone knows that. But a student named Ramachandran, I remember in 2006, he went to for his project. He wants to frame an hypothesis. He has to frame some research questions. He observed the temple and returned back to his gate. And he said, "Sir, people are the Vayalur temple is popularly known to the people. General public or general opinion is that it is a Muruga temple. Worshipping Muruga is popular from Sangam days, and it is popular in Vayalur. He has some historical knowledge, and he made a field visit to the temple. So Vayalur temple is a town which is popular for worship of Lord Muruga Arunmili Subramaniya Swami Tirupoi. It's the famous name of that temple. But here you see, Saivism is popular. Hypothetical statement. Saivism is popular in Vayalur during Chola period, and worshipping of Lord Muruga became popular with the writings of Tirupugal by Arunagiri Nadar and the spiritual work of Kirbananda Warrior. Kirbananda Warrior, a spiritual leader, he was very much associated to the Vayalur temple. He wanted to prove this hypothesis. How it is a complex hypothesis. We can say that this is a complex hypothesis. He has to study the Tirupugal of Arunagiri Nadar, how it was, how that literature popularized Muruga worship, and how the spiritual work of Kirbananda Warrior. Kirbananda Warrior, everyone know, the people in the 80s used to listen to his speeches. He always speak about Lord Muruga. So here he has to prove the or to falsify the theory that it is a Muruga temple. Actually, it was a Shiva temple. The prominent deity of the Vayalur is Lord Shiva, Shivalinga. He studies, he examines the temple and find out on the basis of inscriptional sources. Many number of inscriptions. In almost all the inscriptions that belong to the Chola period, records the temple as a Shiva temple. Some donative inscriptions, he read some donative inscriptions for which people had donated. The king himself had donated for the lighting of lamps in the temple. Lamps had been donated to this temple, but that temple had been recorded as what? Shiva temple. What is the public opinion? When I asked you what you said, everyone said it's a Lord Muruga temple. So the researcher, what he did was he framed an hypothesis. He don't know whether it is a Muruga temple or a Lord Shiva's temple. He don't know. When he went there with a little historical knowledge, he frames a hypothesis. He frames a hypothesis. Sir, this might be a Shiva temple. This might not be a Muruga temple as the people, general public thinks. He sees the architecture of the temple. He finds that the Vimana of the temple is raised on the Mula Vigraha, what we call the prime deity, Lord Shiva. There is also other small temples around it. So he proved on the basis of inscriptions, on the basis of the architectural aspects, Ramachandran was able to prove that that temple was earlier a Shiva temple. That project will be available in the library of history department. 20, 15, 16 years back, this project had been done. See how the students, how the scholars were intelligent, how after observing a temple, he refutes a belief of general public that it is not a well-good temple. He proves he studies the lectures of Kirbananda Warrior, because on many occasions he visit Kirbananda Warrior. Swamigal visited that temple frequently. So Muruga worship became very popular during this period. So you see that worshipping patterns change from time to time. Worshipping pattern change after the passage of 50 or 60 years. Definitely the same thing will not exist. It is you can also select such subjects. You can also frame hypothesis like this. This is one such hypothesis, but it is a complex hypothesis because you have to prove various things. You have to study inscriptions. You have to know the understand the speeches of Kirbananda Warrior, where he went, how he popularized, how he was a crowd puller to his speeches. All these things have an impact. So it is a temple study done by one student, where a hypothesis is like that. This one. He proved it. Right. Next slide. Next slide. Another example, you see, while studying apartheid, untouchability, religious conditions, these are some aspects related to social histories. Yeah. So here there is a hypothesis, a statement, hypothetical statement. Apathy of hegemonic strata towards subalterns influence social pattern. Apathy of hegemonic strata towards subalterns influence social pattern. Some in societies that definitely there must be hierarchy. Almost every period witness so society have a hierarchy of people. There will be many startups. Right. So the hegemonic group, the dominant group will influence the subalterns. So definitely their apathy of the hegemonic strata will have a influence of social pattern. Sometimes it might not be there. So this is an hypothesis. This hypothesis predicts the relationship and the outcome. Here you see the hypothesis predicts the relationship between two groups. One is the hegemonic group, what might be it is. Another is the subalterns. And he studies the relationship, and he also tries to find out the outcome. Right. This is a hypothesis that predicts the relationship and the outcome. This is one example of hypothesis. Let us go to the next one. What do you see? It is a study about a famine. Everyone know that the famines that visited Madras between 1850s and 1850 to 1900s. Madras presidency witnessed many famines. The famines of 1866, 1876 to 78. The Thaduvarda Panjam, it is called in literature, Tamil literature as Thaduvarda Panjam. How the people suffered, that everyone knows. Many works have been done on these topics. One of researcher recently did a work on this famine relief measures of the Madras presidency government, the British government. Prior to that, one research scholar whose name was John Kennedy, who also did a small work on this subject. There are many research works regarding this subject. You can find it out in Shuduganga. Right. I have to showcase you how the hypotheses are framed. I take this as an example. You move to the next slide. These are some observations, or these are some secondary sources that the scholar collected. You see, the first source is Swadesh Mitran dated May 6, 1901. In the red it had been written. Sir William stated 20% of the people of India were dying every year from want of food. This was the status in India during the famine period. This was reported in Swadesh Mitran newspaper. This is a work done some 20 years back. The second is in red, it had been mentioned, the revenue authorities were harassing the riots when collecting the revenue. The riots were thus often compelled to sell their cattle, plug houses, and doors of their homes in order to pay the government taxes. This was the status in 1891. Andhra Patrika reports about the famine, the condition of the people in 1891. Again, you move. Again, these are some sources. I just collected few interesting things to make this program interesting one, because the hypothesis is a boring subject. To make you interesting, make this subject interesting, I have collected this. There is no water in any of the tanks in south. From Mandavachale to Kamudi, the crops of the most parts are gone. The people were everywhere suffering most. There was no water. If a person who surveys for a research problem or research question, a researcher can fix his topics. Somebody will do research on water management during the British period, how water was managed, how tanks were cleaned, how irrigation works were done for the benefit of patients. This can be done, right? For some others, the sufferings of people will be interesting. He can frame a hypothesis relating to the sufferings of the general public, right? Here you see, husband desert their wives, mother leave their children in a helpless condition, run away, and that several deserted children of that kind are being fed in the kitchen, public, general, service kitchens. And that is located within the jurisdiction of Kalagas. So this, for some scholars who is surveying the sources or surveying for a research topic, somebody might select a social topic, a socially relevant topic, and frame a hypothesis. So observation and thinking is most important thing. But all these quotations, within quotes, I have mentioned few things, few aspects of the projects. All this thing was related to a particular thing, that is famines. But you see, there is a social aspect, there is a thing related to water management. Again, there is we can study the sufferings of the people. Again, we can also study the relief measures adopted by the British administration. So there is plenty of things. We researchers had to finalize the research question, fix the topic, and then we can frame the hypothesis that is based only not on a guide or anybody. You have to fix it, right? Next, you go to the next slide. Right, here you see hypothesis of famine. First three aspects are research questions. First you frame questions, then you write hypothesis. Framing questions. First you have to question what you are going to do, what you are going to research. First you have to think about it. Then only you can finalize your hypothesis. First is, did the famine relief measures benefit the patients? Do you think that this is related to the statement that I showed earlier? Is it related or not? The research question is related to the statements that made earlier. The sources data exist there in archives or in some library, right, or in some fields. Whether the questions are related to it, yeah, it is directly related to the quotes that I have mentioned earlier. Right here, you see, did the famine measures benefit the patients? Whether the failure of monsoon was cause for the famines. Here, the world is speaking about climatic change, isn't it? World countries are putting their mind together how to face this problem, climatic change. We historians can bring it as environmental history. Now we are speaking about environmental history. Even hero stones can be brought under environmental history. You find the image of tiger in a hero stone. What does it mean? The habitat where the tribals live, there are many number of tigers. Tigers trouble them. It showcased that there exists a conflict between man and animal. You can study about it. You can frame a hypothesis whether it really existed, why tigers are not found in those hills. Nowadays, you can't find a single tiger there. Either they were hunted. You see that how many hero stones were there. In each hero stone, you find a tiger image. A tiger had been chiseled in the hero stones. But we don't have any tigers today. So you historians can write a environmental history about that hero stones which I showcased. So there are various aspects. That various aspects emerge only by the thinking of the research. If you don't think, you don't get ideas. Right? So here, what are the evil effects of the famines? These are research questions. There is a hypothesis statement that a researcher have to be. This is just an example. If the famine administration and relief measures of the British came as a respite to the sufferings of the people, then the calamity will not have affected severely. This is a statement. Britishers appointed many commissions to meet out the sufferings of the people. They done something. Here, a researcher frames a thesis after surveying finalizing the research questions. He wants to frame a hypothesis whether really the Britishers did something or not to us. We don't know. The researcher don't know. Only after examining, after doing the research, he will find out whether Britishers are done something or not. What relief measures they have adopted. So you are saying if famine administration, if and then are the two words that you must need to mention. You can utilize in framing and hypothesis. You can Google it and find there are many number of websites, and there are many number of applications to write hypotheses. Now online applications are there where you present an idea, the software itself write a hypothesis to you. Such developments were there in the field, in the research field. So here we finalize a hypothesis whether really if the famine administration or the Madras government had done something, definitely that must have been respite to the sufferings of the people. But the fact is not like that. In the findings, he made a different thing. Britishers were not done enough to the general public. People suffered a lot. So this topic made another researcher to study or to tell the thesis to write another thesis. You see that hypothesis gives you more ideas. You see, that is another topic here. Immigration from Madras Presidency to British Burma. It is also a PhD thesis. Immigration from Madras Presidency to British Burma, 1875 to 1885. Here you find the evil effects of famines. This was a research question. There is an hypothesis. Based on the research question and the hypothesis, and another researcher did a new research on the topic immigration from Madras Presidency to British Burma in 1875. So hypothesis gives you new ideas. It is not end in itself, even if it is true. It gives you new aspects. You see that it was during these famines, many number of Tamilians moved to Singapore, Malaysia, the Southeast Asian countries. So this was an evil impact. Particularly this region, the Kaveri belt, Tiruchirappalli, Tanjavur, this area witnessed many people moving to the Southeast Asian countries. Understand it? I think you understand just what is a research question and then what a research hypothesis is. Both are different. That is a search for a quest. Here it is a tentative answer. It is a tentative answer. You understand it? Right. Next one. So here it is called as logical hypothesis that suggests relationship between values without actual evidence. In red, it has been marked as that it is a logical hypothesis suggests that relationship between different variables and without any actual evidence. The researcher will get the evidence only after going to collect the data. Next. Once again, a tribal study, an example for framing an hypothesis. What are the agricultural practices of a tribal community in the past? What are the causes for the lower literacy rate of the tribals in hilly regions? What are the causes for human-animal conflicts? See how many research. This is a research work published, submitted by one scholar whose name was one professor whose name was Shri Guru Chandra Badmani. This was research postings. There you see there is a statement: cultivation of rosemary promoted economic sustainability of tribal communities. Again, transformation from slash and burn method to modern cultivation has transformed the tribal habitat and the landscape of the hills. So here you find two hypotheses: how the cultivation of rosemary promoted the economic welfare of the tribes, because you see that each one is interconnected. Rosemary is connected with the human-animal conflicts. How rosemary is connected with the human-animal conflict? Elephants hate rosemary. Elephants, you see that elephants destroy the crops of the tribals that they cultivated. They went into the fields. Tribals were not in a position to prevent it. Even electric fences were broken by the elephants. So what they thought, instead of cultivating sugarcane, let us change our cultivation pattern from sugarcane to rosemary. See how the cultivating pattern of a tribal group changes because of the human-animal conflict. You understand this? So there is a link in framing hypothesis as framing research question. There must be link with one question to another. It should not be a loose one. Every aspect should be interconnected. Though there exist many different questions, each are interconnected. So, but on the other side, we also study the economic aspects of the tribal group. Their economic standard had improved because of the cultivation of rosemary. Instead of sugarcane that had been destroyed and they have to face huge losses. When they started cultivating rosemary, they were economically benefited because elephants are not troubling them. Here, he was able to prove the hypothesis that what transformation, what the rosemary, cultivation of rosemary promoted the economic development. In the process of the research, he answers all these questions. Again, here you see, not only the agricultural, you find the changes in the agricultural products, but you also find the change in the pattern of agricultural methods as well. How the slash and burn method, slash and burn method is the oldest practice, the cultivating practice of tribal groups, slash and burn methods. You can Google it and find out what is slash and burn method. Now it is not followed. If you follow it, then the reserve forest will burn. It was not allowed nowadays. Now what they did, they started adopting modern agricultural methods, and that had transformed the tribal habitat. You see that while they were adopting the slash and burn method, they settled at a particular place and then they let us shift to other places. But whereas now the tribal started to stay permanently fitting themselves to a group of villages. They don't shift from that villages. Earlier, they moved from one region of the forest to the other region. Here, the scholar fixes a hypothesis. Transformation from slash and burn method to modern cultivation have transformed the tribal habitat and landscape of the hills. He thinks like that and he starts working on this aspect and proves it. Yes, really, tribals started and now started live a settled life. They are not migrating. Yes, slash and burn method, the ancient method had gone. And he also find that the landscapes of the hill also, you just see the satellite images of the hilly reserve forest areas. You do one thing, when you are free, just go to the Google Maps and search the hilly regions. If you see some forest areas in the this year, after 10 years, you can find those forest areas might become fields. This has been happening hundreds and hundreds of years. This process is going on. The forest has been destroyed and modern cultivating patterns have been introduced. So you can find there is change in the landscapes of the hill. You can also find how new agricultural patterns have been adopted by the tribes. The researcher had fixed this as a hypothesis, right? This is another example. Again, next, another, I will complete just in few minutes. Next slide. Here you see Annie Besant. Everybody know Annie, yeah, being history students. I just want to show you some examples from tribal study to temple study. Again, the famines. There are different varied subjects in history. That's why I want to showcase you how you can frame hypotheses related to different aspects of our subject. Here it is a topic related to Mrs. Annie Besant. Dr. Rani, one of the head of the department of Vedalar College, had done a research wonderful work on Mrs. Annie Besant. Annie Besant, everybody know, but here you see the topic is role of Annie Besant in freedom struggle, a critical study. What is the research question here? What prompted Mrs. Annie Besant to enter freedom struggle? She is a foreigner. What prompted her? You are Indian. She is a foreigner. What prompted her to enter into freedom struggle? You see how people had thought differently. Clear. Annie Besant is a foreigner. What made her to think about the Indians? Second, how she suddenly shifted from theosophical work to politics. She was a theosophist. In 1881, she joined the theosophical movement. She came to India from England. She is an Irish lady. But her contribution in the form of home rule movement is a notable one. That had been studied by many. But you see, there is a different thinking. Why, after theosophical work, she shifted to politics? Whether it is a spontaneous thing, whether she had any pre-planned intention of entering into politics, is there any connection between theosophy and politics? You understand this? So here you find interesting. If Annie Besant have entered into politics, it is because of her popularity gained through social service and religious work. This is an hypothetical statement. If Annie Besant have entered into politics, it is because of her popularity that she gained because of the theosophical work, sometimes religious work. She is called as in those days. She is a lady who know the entire Vedic literature. She translated many Sanskrit literature. She was popularly called as Indian Saraswati. She was worshipped like a great being. So whether she utilized this in politics, utilized this popularity in politics. So these are some questions, and that had been hypothesized like this, and the research was done. Right? Next. My concluding remarks. Before concluding remarks, there are many other things. Prayer slides we have to go. In the concluding remarks, I want to say, before that, I want to just go to the earlier slides. You might fear that, oh, once again, Sarah is going to start from the beginning. Don't worry, I will finish. Wait. Right. There are different types of hypotheses. So uses of hypothesis. A few questions that have you go to different types of hypothesis. No. After. Uses of types of hypothesis. There are different types of hypothesis: descriptive, relational, working, null, statistical, complex hypothesis, analytical hypothesis, of which we have discussed with the examples. Of this hypothesis, analytical hypothesis is most wonderful hypothesis that a good scholar will frame analytical hypothesis. Right? Next slide.
So previous or the
Next one. Next. Desirable characters of hypothesis. That must be a clear statement. That must have a clarity, a testability, then inclusion of empirical reference. That must be specific to a point, and that must relate to a theory to refute or support. You can refute a theory or support a theory. So these are some of the desirable characters of a hypothesis. I think now you understand, after seeing those examples, I think you understand what it is. Next. Understanding research question and economics. Here, research question. Did the nations have more agricultural productivity, have good future? Again, was excessive defense expenditure a deal? These are research questions. I read it in front line, a hypothetical statement. What the future belongs to nation who have grains, not guns. These are few things, few examples. Next, you go to next one. You go to the concluding. Now let us come to the last part. The research is designed or planned or structured to test the hypothesis. Whether or not a given hypothesis is the answer, a tentative answer to a research question are true or not, that is not our worry. If you are not able to construct a hypothesis, the researcher can explore the answer for his research question through any accepted methodology that is also accepted. In both the cases of whether formulating a hypothesis or not, the researcher examines the authenticated data that are relevant to his research questions, since the aim of research is to answer the research questions. With this, let me end my lecture here. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
It was an eye-opening session, and we express our profound thanks for making yourself present on such a busy schedule, sir. Thank you.
next online 5 minutes.
I request the participants to stay with us connected for the second session, which will be commenced within 5 minutes. We'll have a short session break now. Kindly please stay in the hall. Participants here, kindly please stay in the hall.
இவ்வளவு பண்றது பேக்ரவுண்ட் பாக்க எப்படி இருக்கு இந்த பேக்ரவுண்ட் வந்து பாக்குறது எப்படி புரியுது ஒன்லி கேமராவை கொஞ்சம் சேஞ்ச் பண்ணும்
அதுல தெரியுது
அப்புறம் ரெண்டு ஸ்கிரீன் இல்லைன்னா ஒரு ஏதாவது ஒரு
நாளைக்கு
இல்லைன்னா பிளேஸ் அந்த சைடு
இல்ல நாளைக்கு கேமரா
சொல்றது புரியுதா இதுவரை புரியுது இல்லையா அப்போ இதுவரை நீங்க பாக்க இல்லையா நேத்து இப்படிதான் இருந்துச்சு நீ பாத்துக்கிட்டா கொஞ்சம் இப்படி திருப்பலாம் கூட இது தெரிஞ்சிடும்
எங்க ஜமால் போறானு
Session two, review of knowledge of our thesis writing will be commenced in 5 minutes. We'll have a session break. Professor Mohamed Idris, sir, are you connected with us? So kindly switch on your video, please. Professor Mohamed Idris, are you connected with us? Professor Mohamed Idris. Sir, please switch on your video. Professor Mohamed Idris, sir, are you connected with us? So could you hear us? So could you hear us? So kindly connect with audio, you are not audible. So shall we start over the session? You are not audible.
Hello,
Okay, sir, you are audible now. Please start the session, sir.
Now,
Hello.
it's time for technical session 2, review of literature for thesis writing. Professor Dr. Mohamed Idris will preside over the session. Professor Dr. Mohamed Idris, former head and in charge of Maharana Pratap Chair, Department of History, Punjab University. He has a tremendous record of teaching and research experience for more than 24 years. He has authored and edited more than 10 books, and also acted as chief editor in many editorial boards, and has presented and published more than 50 papers in both national and international forums. He was awarded Punjab Government State Award in Literature and Social Service in 2010. He was honored by Indian High Commission in Australia and Canada. He was also awarded the special honor by Academy of Sikh Religion and Culture, Patiala. It has been a great honor and privilege for the Department of History, Jamal Mohammed College, to have such eminent and learned scholar to preside over the event. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Hello,
You are
Hello.
audible. Yes, sir, you are audible. We can hear you, sir.
first of all, I am very thankful to Dr. Yasser Mohammed sir, Principal sir, and faculty, organizing secretary, coordinators of this 5-day workshop for giving me this academic opportunity to share my views regarding the review of literature for thesis writing. I want to highlight basically 4-5 major points related to the review of literature. First of all, what is a literature review or definition of literature review? Or number two, I want to discuss with you objectives of a literature review. What are our aims? How, for what purpose we are reviewing the existing literature or contemporary sources in social sciences, particularly in the subject of history, etc. Number three, strategies for the literature review. What are our selection purpose, mode of selection, or the sources related to the review of literature, nature of sources. Another one is number fourth point, importance of literature. Literature की importance क्या है और relevant literature related to the social sciences or history. Number fifth, general guidelines for a scholar for the thesis writing or for the writing of a book in the social sciences. Finally, conclusion or types of literature reviews in social sciences. As we know, literature, what is a literature? A literature review is a summary of the published work in the field of the subject, in the field of, for example, in the history, in economics, psychology, and other subjects. This can be a section of a larger paper or article, or can be the focus of an entire paper. Literature reviews shows that you have examined the knowledge or existing knowledge and can justify your thesis or research questions. There are hello. There are also valuable tools for other researchers who needs to be find a summary of that field of knowledge. Definition of literature is identifying the boundaries and parameters of the review. This includes the specific research question or topic and setting criteria for the types of sources to be included. Another one point is review of literature, selection of the topic, selection of the sources, conducting a comprehensive search across various databases and sources to gather relevant materials. Selection involves evaluating those sources based on their quality, their relevance, and contribution to the specific topic. Another one is how to analyze or analysis of the sources. First of all, reviewing the critically analyzing the selection literature. We must know about the critical analysis or selected literature, whether it is related to the contemporary sources, writings, monographs, or government confidential reports, secret reports, political reports, or foreign affairs reports, etc. This involves comparing and contrasting different perspectives, identifying key themes, methodologies, findings, and gaps in the existing research. Another part of the review of literature is organization and presentation of the literature, structuring the review in a coherent manner. This might this might be involved organizing the literature chronologically, thematically, or methodologically, depending on the research objectives. If you want to be right in history, that means chronological sources, the review of the sources on the basis of chronology, or in other subjects, according to the methodology of the social sciences subjects. Another important part of the definition is critical evaluation of the sources, assessing the strengths, the weaknesses, and limitations of the existing literature. This evaluation will help us in identifying areas where further research is needed and where the proposed research can be contributed. Second part of the question is objectives of the literature review. Why we are reviewing the literature, what is of the purpose, or what will be the benefits of the review of literature. The objective of a literature review are multi-faceted, serving various crucial purposes in the research process. Or the objective is to establish context, relevance of the existing literature and our thesis writings purpose. Or for this purpose, we provide a comprehensive overview of existing knowledge and research related to the topic, situating the current study within the broader context, situating the current study within the broader context of the field. Next to the established context, to identify the gaps between the existing literature and we are working on the our thesis or dissertation for the research degrees. So identifying gaps means to identify gaps, controversies, contradictions, or underexplored areas in the existing literature. This helps us in the pinpointing where further research is needed. And thirdly, we must to evaluate on the basis of critical analysis. Or critical evaluation critically assesses the quality, the methodology, the strengths, and limitations of the existing literature. This evaluation aids in understanding the credibility and reliability of previous literatures. So after that, what are to establish justification of our study and significance of current research is the next step to write a thesis by the scholar to demonstrating how it fills a particular gap, to resolve a contradiction, or to contribute something new in the field. And another one is information on the basis of methodology. Guide the selection of appropriate research methods and approaches based on the review of previous studies. It helps us in refining research questions and research problems, and in some subjects like education, psychology, or on the basis of other data to develop a hypothesis. Another one is supporting theory in the development. To assist in constructing and supporting the theoretical framework or conceptual model for the research. It aids in building a theoretical foundation for the study. Another one is the part of the literature review is how to select the literature or how to search literature for the review. Or for that purpose, we must know important sources, primary studies related to our subject or related to our research problem. We must to identify or we have a mechanism or to be a strategy for the selection of literature. When, when conducting a literature search, employing effective strategies enhances the thoroughness and relevance of your findings. First of all, we must define clear objectives. For that purpose, we have some specific keywords, specify keywords to develop a key list of keywords or conceptualize synonymous or to be choose relevant database and resources. Like we must know on the modern in the modern age we have the some kind of the internet sources like the JSTOR or IEEE, Explore, Psyche information, etc. So we must include latest sources on the basis of technology. These sources are available in the internet libraries or other institutional libraries catalogs or on the available in the online repositories like the Google Scholar, ResearchGate, institutional gray literature, etc. So we must know about the utilized advanced search features, filters, databases, publications, data studies, study types, languages, refine results on the basis of subject headings. We must use controlled vocabulary or subject headings to provide by databases to find more precise results. So another part of the review of literature is to be citations or forward searchings. Look for new publications, citations that have important papers within your field. So how to evaluate the thesis? How to evaluate the literary sources or historical sources? Whether they are the genuine sources or they have the credibility or they have some kind of the authentic works or existing literature available to us. So this part is very crucial for the scholar who is writing a thesis. Evaluating sources is a crucial to ensure the reliability and relevance of the information you are using for research or academic purpose. We must know about the relevance, like the peer-reviewed articles. If we want to use a article, it must be or possibly a peer review published in the peer-reviewed journal or after the rigorous evaluation by the field experts, ensuring high accuracy and credibility, offering in-depth analysis and current information relevant to the scholarly discourse. Number two, scholarly books. The popular, for example, in history subject, there are contemporary sources census reports after 1881, or in the medieval times, the sources written by the court historians, for example, the book written by Abul Fazl, Aine Akbari, and Akbarnama. Earlier to that, the book written by Sheikh Ali Husbiri, Kashful Mahsoob, for the purpose of his Sufism in the northwest India, or the writings written by the emperors Tujhke Babri or Tujhke Jahangiri. These are the contemporary sources, or these are very popular. The purpose of the writers was at that time may be different, but it was related to the history or the books. From these books, we have to know about the information related to the army, society, economy, political system, religion, society, secular traditions, etc. These books written by obviously scholars, field experts, provided comprehensive coverage, historical context, and theoretical frameworks. In the remaining relevant or for foundation or timeless knowledge, these some kind of the so basically in the review of literature in history subject or some other social sciences, the sources are two kinds, primary, as we know, and secondary. So other credible sources such as reports or literature from reputable institutions might lack of the formal peer-reviewed processes, but offer valuable insights into current topics or issues related to the thesis writing or related to the PhD or MPhil students or a scholar writing a book on the specific topic or theme. So overall, irrespective of the source type, assessing credibility, relevance to your research, currency, and the transparency of methodologies used remains essential for ensuring the reliability of information. So, for the review of literature, we must know about the organization of the literature. First, when we collect the data or sources related to a theme, we must organize it. For the organization purpose, we have certain kind of the methods. So, for the efficient evaluation, for the purpose of evaluation, we must uh, 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 organize or synthesize information and maintaining clearly in your our research. So there are certain kind of methods to help to organize our research or to evaluate sources. Number one, chronological order. In this order, we must arrange sources by publication date, shows historical evaluation, or ideal for tracking idea or development. We must know chronology, the first source of publication, second source of publication, year, their gaps, their centuries, etc. Number two, thematic grouping, organizing by common themes. Organizing by common themes aids to analyze their contributions or challenges within a theoretical context. किसी particular specific topic के ऊपर we must collect the information or for the review of purpose we must to collect or establish data in a separate file or in the form of cards. Number three, Number four, citation managers. These tools import, categorize, tag, and generate citations, enabling collective collaborative work among the researchers. So for the efficient organizational tips, we must maintain uniform naming conventions, or add notes for quick references when we organize these literature for the review purpose. We must to analyze and to separate on the basis of naming or chronological or regular updates. When we start our research or when we are working, we will start our research problem or PhD thesis. We must know in the latest publications in the subject. We must know latest online sources, or we must update in these sources on the basis of their category, or that means to be on the basis of their uh, uh, nature of the source. So for that, there are certain kind of the journal guidelines for the literature reviews. We must know in the PhD thesis how many sources we evaluate, or in a way, it depends upon the research problem, research theme, or in related to the convenience of the supervisor, availability of the sources in terms of primary sources, in terms of the secondary sources. But in PhD thesis, it must be there 10 to 8 to 10 pages for the evaluation. In these pages, it doesn't mean to be a one source on the one source. To you have to write a full-fledged review of a book, full-fledged review of a manuscript, or any other source, primary report, secondary report, confidential reports. But it will be, maybe depends on the assignment, maybe on the research problem. In a way, at least 8 to 10 sources to be evaluated related to the search topic. So choosing works, generally, as we know, our literature review must include enough works in the form of bibliography or books list in the endnotes to, in a way, to provide evidence of both the depth of research and related to the topic, at least one important angle of it. The research topic, we know about the research topic or such problem, or we must know about its depth or its relevance related to the subject. The number of works necessary to do this will depends on your topic again. For most topics, at least in a way, social sciences, there is a trend to highlight or to discuss 8 to 10 sources, mostly books, or in the subject of history, significantly the primary sources. Usually in economics and other subjects, the subjects related to the data are sometimes latest articles also be reviewed if there are necessary. For example, there is a larger article on the basis of latest data or census reports or any kind of the GDP related. It may also be reviewed in the review of literature. So for that, some might be appear in the end notes also. So organizing the literature, the steps, and the contents of the literature review. The literature we are reviewing, what kind of the nature or what kind of the content we review it. The literature review is a research paper with three ingredients. Number one, a brief discussion in the book under review for the thesis purpose. We know it. A brief discussion of the issue, the person, the event, the or idea. While this section should be brief, if needs to be set up thesis and literature that follows. That means brief discussion of the person who wrote history, the or who wrote the event or the idea, what kind of the his nature, whether he is a trained historian or a professional writer, a professional journalist, or what was his purpose to write the particular book or writing, or the relevance or the data he used for his purpose for the writing, the source and the review. So number two, our thesis about the literature, clear argument. We must know about the strength of the source. We must know about the weakness of the source under review to be established between the our study and the present study, the such gap. So argument, we must establish argument on the basis of topic or evidence or in continuation of the existing studies. Another one is to be highlight that in the guideline for the purpose of documentation. In social sciences, documentation is very important source. So for that, in documentation, we know about the collection or their purpose or to highlight their uses of a good literature. So why we are using literature or the literature using for our study? What is its importance? A literature review may consist of a simply a summary of key sources. But in social sciences, a literature review usually has an organizational pattern and combines with summary and synthesis, often with specific conceptual categories. A summary is a recap of the important information of the source, but a synthesis is a reorganization or a reshuffling of that information in a way that informs how you are planning to investigate a research problem. The analytical features of a literature review might be when we reviewing the literature, give a new interpretation of old material or combine new with old interpretation. That means we must establish a continuity with our topic, our theme, with the literature under review. Or number two, trace the intellectual progression of the field, including major databases. In the empirical studies, we must establish a intellectual progression. The major databases are available in the, for example, in Delhi, in the year of 1911. What were in Delhi was there is the only population of around 4 to 5 lakh. Or for the construction of New Delhi, the British Darbar established the data, fixed the amount 9 crore rupees to construct new buildings in Delhi. or there was approximate expenditures on Delhi's construction was 13 crore. So what were the reasons? The overpopulation of the Delhi, the after 1911, there were two, three major changes. Migration from the southern states, or partition of India, and after partition, a large number of the refugees coming to Delhi from the Pakistani Punjab. So this kind of the continuity, why the Delhi, this is an example. So another one is the importance of good resources. Depending on the situation, evaluate the sources, advise the reader on the most pertinent or relevant research. We are working on a particular topic, we must know about the study of history before the study, we know about the situation. For example, the literature produced in the times of British partition, in the partition times, it was entirely different from the 1960s. So at that time, the literature was produced in the Northwest India on the basis of the stories, narrations related to the women rapes, child abducting, or the ujada, or the major uh, drawbacks of the partition. That's of the people. And prior to that, the literature of India was focused on the partition, patriotism, or to be for the independence, our poetry, our historical writings, our constitutional political writings. So nature or the situation, we must know that kind of the society, polity, economy of those times when the source was produced by a particular historian, writer, or literary person. Usually the conclusion of a literature review. This is the very important part of the review literature. We know about we are writing reviews, or we can see books or thesis. The reviews were not, they were not concluded by the scholars. They know about their weaknesses or strengths of the already existed literature, but they never to be concluded. So this is the important part. We know about the 10, 8, or books under review, or we must conclude in the form of summary. Or that summary to be established gaps and on the basis of of research problem, how we will to be research the existing gaps, or in continuation we know. Another one is the we know about the place of work, its contribution, understanding the research problem being studied. Research problem to understand, for the understanding of research problem, we on the basis of methodology of the subject, or to describe the relationship of each subject with other subjects. For example, we always say that history is an unending dialogue between the past and present, each task according. Or history is the mother of all social sciences. But we want to know about the geography, or we want to know computers history, data technologies history. So relationship between the topic and existing literature, so we must identify. Or we also explore it new ways to interpret the prior existing literature. Existing prior existing literature, new ways ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਿਕ, according to new ways, we there will be no a stereotype kind of the repetition, or we must know we must have our own kind of the interpretation, our own kind of the idea, our own kind of the evaluation system. So to resolve the conflicts, contradictory previous studies, to resolve the contradictions means there are obviously existed studies have concluded on the basis of some kind of questions for the future researchers, for the coming researchers. So we must, these questions will take some time or to be on the basis of some other kind of the questions. It depends upon the time, it depends upon the nature of growth of society or particular production of literature. So for that, these are the some basic guidelines. So literature review, we have already discussed. In last, I want to conclude it on the basis of some common faults or pitfalls in the review of literature. Usually and generally, in these days, the scholars are not focusing on the literature review. That means the lack of focus or depth in the review of literature. So we must clearly define the scope and objective of the literature, our scope and objective of literature review. For what purpose we are reviewing the literature, or we have our own strengths, we have our own limitations. And we must focus on the relevant sources only, which are directly contribute to our research questions or our thesis objectives, or refrain from including or unrelated materials. Usually, the scholars are not focusing to particular studies. They are working on just to be in a formal, but we must contribute directly or focus only the sources clearly related to our thesis only. Number two, the students usually to highlight the publication here, the thesis, the name of the writer, publication, name of the publisher, or they never want to be evaluated on the basis of critical analysis. So, to we must avoid or we must to avoid summarization of the particular source under review. We evaluate on the basis of strengths, weaknesses, methodologies, and arguments with each source. Another, for example, on the basis of chronologically, the thesis, the writings are different. The source under review of 18th century have another kind of the society, or 19th century. There are obviously changes in the society, polity, economy. So we established every source on the basis of some basic separate argument. Or we must analyze a piece of research on the basis of its contribution to the understanding of our research topic, and its limitations also. So every source or research and an ending process. So in continuation, the which we must evaluate already existed literature. Usually students or scholars avoid this kind of the evaluation. Or we can say also sometimes we have the use the outdated source materials or we sometimes we depended upon over reliance on the sources. Some sources are outdated. We don't know about their importance. We do not know about the latest studies. The studies or sources which are easily available to us. We use it, but we never want to be made efforts for new sources. So in this pitfall, we usually emphasize on recent and credible sources that with the current research trends, we must know our research trends in our subject or in our discipline, latest publications related to our topic or latest trends, latest writings style. Be cautious of biases in sources and consider diverse perspectives, balance viewpoints to provide a comprehensive analysis. We must know about the purpose of the writing of a particular source, their preconceived notions of the writer who wrote history, who wrote a literary book, who wrote a particular type of on the society, on the problems in the society. We have to know about the purpose of the who wrote a primary or secondary writing. So there are certain kind of the plagiarism issues in the review of literature. Usually we avoid it. Precautions for our research works on the basis of precautions or precautionary measures we must follow. We must write properly, cite and reference of all sources used in our literature. The book, first publication, its a writer, second publication, year of the publication, the purpose of the second publication, purpose of the first publication, or from where it is published. This kind of the citations must be checked care by the scholar who are working on the PhDs. Or take diligent notes while reading and writing to ensure our understanding and interpretation of the material. When we are focusing on a review of literature, we must know about the our own understanding in the parameters of our mentioned already discussed. So use plagiarism checking software. In these days, there are a large number of the plagiarism softwares are available, whether the source is genuine or first published by the seems to be a scholar, or is the relevance or the contribution of the particular scholar. So, in brief, in my conclusion, the process of conducting a literature review have several crucial steps. It involves synthesizing existing knowledge by summarizing key findings, identifying patterns, and critically analyzing sources. However, pitfalls like a lack of focus, failure to critically evaluate sources, reliance on outdated materials, and plagiarism must be avoided to ensure a robust review. A well conducted literature review is the cornerstone of a successful thesis. It provides a solid foundation by establishing the context, identifying gaps, and building a theoretical framework for the research. It not only showcases our understanding of existing scholarship, but also lays the groundwork for contributing new insights to the field. So we must remember a comprehensive and well-organized literature review serves as a guide, supporting the entire thesis research process and lending credibility to a to our thesis. Its importance cannot be overstated. It's the compass that directs the course of our academic contribution and validates significance of our work within the larger scholarly landscape. So once again, I am very thankful to the organizers, principal sahab, faculty members, coordinator of the this 5 day workshop on the various aspects related to the thesis writing, particularly Dr. Mohamed Yasser Saab and other listeners, the faculty members from various parts of the country for giving me this opportunity and listening me patiently. Thank you, sir. Hello. Hello.
Thank you, sir. The Department of History feels enlightened by sharing the session with you, sir. And we request you to hold on for a minute for the question and answer sessions. Participants having any queries can clear it out with sir. Any questions? Participants, do you have any questions regarding the session? Thank you, sir. Thank you for an eye-opening session.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this.
What are they?
Now we call upon scholar Mr. Sanjay to provide vote of thanks.
A warm greetings to one and all. So I take this opportunity to express a profound thanks. So first of all, I would like to thank I'd like to thank our beloved secretary and correspondent sir on his in absence here. Then I'd like to thank our respected principal sir. Thank you, sir. And I would like to thank our beloved head of the department, sir, who was the backbone of the department and who renders hearty help for organizing such conferences and workshops. I thank him. Then I'd like to thank our organizing secretaries, Mr. Vignesh and Dr. Yasis for their we would like to propose thanks to today's session guest. First technical session was presided by Dr. S. Z. Nyasuddin, Associate Professor, Department of History, Sri Vasudev College. Thank you, sir, for making your way along from Europe at this bad situation, with a bad weather condition, for making a way along and making yourself present for the gathering. And I'd like to thank the presider of the technical session 2, Professor Dr. Mohamed for his eye-opening session. I would like to thank each and every stakeholder of the workshop. Once again, I thank you all. Thank you.
Declare the water.
So we'd like to wind up the session. We'll have 3 sessions presiding tomorrow from morning 9:30. We'll have 3 sessions presiding over tomorrow. Thank you. With this, we'd like to wind up the session. Thank you. We have a feedback link on the online. It will be given to your Gmail. So kindly please fill the link. It will be acting as your attendance for the session.
கேமரா அப்படி தூக்கிட்டே வரேன் நல்லா இல்லை